Hi, Nate. Oh, I'll start that again. Hi, I'm Nate Wakeford, masculinity and mindset coach. We're in our weekly coaching session. I'm going to be putting this into two parts. The first, of course, me talking about masculine frame, the questions that have been posted inside the Sovereign Brotherhood School community. And then we'll go into a coaching session with some of the men that are inside this call. So the question that has been put forward here is, do you take pride in the beauty of the things that make up your masculinity? Do you tolerate disrespect at any level? How can you impact your family community by being in your natural masculinity? So this is interesting because I just did a carousel post, those of you who might be following me, on my Instagram, Sovereign Wealth. And I talked about the double standards around masculinity. There has been a normalization of shaming of masculinity, practices that shame masculinity. And what I bring up in the article, in the captions below the post of the carousel that I posted, is that when little boys grow up and they hear a message from society that masculinity is bad, that men are not good, and that they're also simultaneously rewarded for adopting feminine characteristics or behaviors, we start to see this inversion start to take place. There's a shaming of masculine qualities. And when boys do not hold an aspirational desire to become strong, mature, healthy men, in fact, when they start to do the opposite, when they start to adopt the shaming of masculinity and even defend the shaming of masculinity, then it's a very difficult proposition to break that cycle. So what's required is the opposite. It's that the men who adopt masculine frame, the men who begin to thrive in life, start to get seen, start to be rewarded. Now, the unfortunate thing is the versions of masculinity that are being shown right now, your Andrew Tates, the red pill movement, are not the best examples of masculinity or healthy masculinity at all. And in some cases, it's still quite destructive to families and society. The version of masculinity that's being put forward has materialistic pursuit as the highest outcome, and which is basically seeking status, approval, validation seeking behaviors, and seeking significance. And it's actually creating more false frame men, not men that I would consider to have authentic frame. The alternate path is that you get strong men that build themselves up physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. They are financially successful. They do have a healthy relationship with women. But the outcomes that they're motivated towards with the creation of those resources, the creation of their effort, is towards the restoration of community, the restoration of the family unit, to be aspirational in things that protect the environment, that raise kids in a healthy way. So there's no family virtues that are being promoted through the model of masculinity that the aspirational man, the men who are given, examples of, are pointed towards. And I think that it's unfortunate that's the best we have to offer. Mind you, it's a step that is better than the diminishment of masculinity through shame, where, and this isn't to in any way excuse behaviors of men that are distorted. If there's any sexual violence, if there's any, lack of integrity, these sort of things, these are all expressions not of healthy masculinity, but distorted masculinity. And when there are very few healthy role models for boys, for men to emulate, to follow, there is a lack of clarity on the vision that a man might want to create for himself. And there's also still a lack of, well, the Tulum's a little bit different, but this, in a general sense, there is still a lack of supporting resources for men on their rite of passage to become great men by learning what they need to do to become effective in their role. So that the examples, and instead of what's actually happening, before I go to that, instead what I see happening is that all men, even good men, are lumped into a generalization that, men are responsible for the downfall of society. Men are responsible for basically all of the problems that are experiencing in family. And this is not to enter into a debate of the sexes to create separation or division. It's rather saying men are needed, honorable men need to be recognized. There needs to be an example set for boys on what healthy masculinity looks like. Men need to hold each other accountable. And actually, healthy masculinity is the way that society can be restored. We're at the product of, as I said, distorted masculinity, not healthy masculinity. Healthy masculinity can stand up to government, will stand up for the feminization of boys, and then bring them back again and teach them the lessons. There will be a ending of this bias towards pulling fathers away from their homes, and that, because without the presence of a healthy father in families, what ends up happening is boys are raised without the presence of healthy masculinity. And there's through the implementation of rites of passage, we redirect masculinity back towards healthy virtues. And what I discovered is that starts within ourselves. Because most of us men, like I mentioned, myself included, have gone through an indoctrination process where through the movies, through television, we started to see, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, Friends. We started to see feminized or gay men start to fill entertainment. And we stopped seeing the presence of Sigma men, dominant men that women look up to, that boys can look up to, role models, superheroes, courageous men, men of virtue, of integrity, of authority. Those men got stripped away from the movies and the entertainment to take away the role models from boys. So we stopped acknowledging the healthy traits within men. And what you instead focused on collectively was the distorted traits in men, but without offering a solution. And what that does is that the amplification of shame in men has men abandon themselves. This is why I say the first thing you need to do as a man is reclaim the beauty in yourself. Reclaim what is good in you. Start honoring the things within yourself that you can be proud of, that distinctly relate to your masculinity, and to be around other good men and rise together where you appreciate each other in your endeavors to become extraordinary. You embrace and engage into your rite of passage to learn the things that you need to know to be effective in your role. This is why society used to be constructed. It was not built around, learning skills to drive the industrial revolution. It was around learning the skills to be effective as a man, to be effective in the way that you relate to your woman, to be effective in raising children. These are the things that traditional cultures, indigenous cultures, teach their children: how to resolve conflict, how to maintain a healthy community. We don't learn any of these things. That's why we live in a society of division and separation, and where we're in a society of entitlement, comfort-seeking, distraction-seeking behaviors, rather than being on the path of self-awareness and self-realization. And instead, from our pain, we try to blame others. So none of what I'm sharing is about blame. It's about taking responsibility and having an awareness of self, of the decisions that we are subconsciously being governed by. My path to reclaiming the beauty in my masculinity, my path to reclaiming the beauty in my masculinity happened from a low point where much of my ego was being dissolved to a point of humility, because because of the false frame that I'd created for myself, where I was seeking validation. This frame of masculinity that I'm telling you is happening so much as the empowered man, you take the top G kind of mentality, was the false frame that crumbled, because externally I was presenting myself, having made significant amounts of money, having had significant success with women, having fought, in national competitions in Taekwondo and things like that, traveled to like 40 countries, all this sort of stuff. So I had the external references of someone who appeared to have his life together and have masculine frame, but underneath, I didn't really fully believe it. I didn't really feel truly a high status man, because I'd grown up bullied extensively through my childhood, and I still carried shame, and I was still inside a feminized frame of masculinity, attempting to conform to what I thought the external world wanted, to what this society rewards, rather than being a true man of substance that had true authentic frame, which is, if you read my content, is about having an internal frame of authority and an internal frame of reference. We no longer seek external validation, acceptance, or approval. Everything I had been doing was in pursuit of external validation, acceptance, and approval. So I did not have a true masculine frame. I had a false frame, or what I call a false frame. If you read my Sovereign Power book, I go into a lot of detail. It's free inside the Sovereign Brotherhood Community. So the path back, as I mentioned, is developing an appreciation of yourself. And you can't go straight as a man, straight to loving yourself, in my opinion. For me as a man, you have to earn it. You do it through disciplined self-care, and taking care of yourself is the highest priority. In fact, so much of what we are told to do by society is to sacrifice ourselves, to not take care of ourselves, whilst at the same time being berated, shamed for where we fail to show up in the roles that we were never taught that we needed to be effective, or how to be taught to be effective in the first place. So you need to start learning how to be effective as a man. That's what the rite of passage is. You need to start to show up for yourself, to make sure your physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental needs are provided for by yourself, for yourself, is the highest priority. Show up with discipline, with integrity, and soon you'll gain momentum, and you'll start to feel the results of your efforts. And it's that consistency in self-care that you start to build your esteem up, and you start to become a man of frame, because you start to hold yourself in high esteem and high status, that you no longer reach for those things outside of self to be, the validation seeking behaviors or approval seeking behaviors. You don't need to, because you're proven love of yourself, and you've earned it over a period of time with your integrity, consistency, and discipline. You start to reclaim, through the deeper subconscious healing work, your power. You resolve your childhood traumas. You reclaim your primal nature. You reclaim your ability to be aggressive, which actually gives you the ability to be a safe man, because you're willing to protect yourself and not feel threatened, and you're willing to protect others. You're not emotionally reactive anymore, which is where a lot of men create pain. You're willing because you're not insecure. You don't have validation or approval seeking behaviors. You don't need to behave in activities that are incongruous, that are not aligned with truth, to try and postulate or present yourself as something that you're not. You stop tolerating any sort of disrespect or diminishment because you don't disrespect yourself anymore. You don't tolerate the behaviors from yourself that diminish you, so you certainly don't tolerate them from other people. And this is how you start to maintain your status and not let it be eroded. See, many men who find themselves in disempowering relationships with women, they have trained or enabled the woman in their life to disrespect them. And so out of the woman eventually becomes eventually comes to a place of disdain and resentment. And the more that the man tolerates that, the more that she's justified in that, and the more that she expresses that. And she ends up being there in the relationship out of convenience, not out of loyalty and love. It's really important never to tolerate disrespect from anyone, men or women, because what you allow or accept as a disrespecting behavior, that which diminishes you, you fall into the frame of someone else, a limiting frame of someone else that sees you as less. And the part of you that allows that, is complementary to that, allows those, disparaging remarks or statements to land, or behaviors to influence you. Once a man becomes in his power, once he develops this healthy discipline, consistency in his self-care, he starts to increase his capacity to bring order to chaos in his environment. He starts to earn his own confidence, esteem, momentum. He starts to become a very powerful and positive contributor to his society. People start to look up to him. He starts to hold leadership in a powerful and constructive way. People follow him. And it's because he brings value to himself and the people around him. He's a man of service. He protects, he provides, he leads, he serves. He's a man who creates safety. He's a man of integrity and alignment. He's a man who rights his wrongs, who makes good on the mistakes that he makes. He's someone who becomes dependable, reliable, trustworthy. And he's a man who's willing to stand for truth, even if people attack him, because he has a strong foundation. He has a strong identity that is internally referenced. So he stands for himself. What then needs to change is a new narrative where these men who have worked, because men are made, men that build themselves up into that honorable position often get recognized by their own community. But we need to make that something which is aspirational again. See, there is this subversive agenda to attack masculinity. And that's why we don't, as I mentioned before, have these role models. So I believe we have to restore first ourselves, then to our families, then to our communities, us as men to be healthy role models, to start to be these examples for our children, to restore community. And then maybe create different entertainment, because we now have YouTube. There's no reason why we can't create examples of healthy masculinity, create content around this, start to be the men that that would show the model of masculinity that the little versions of ourselves, the boy versions of ourselves needed, that wasn't there when we grew up. I know that many of the men, obviously, that are watching this video recording are on the path. You're doing the work. I honor you for that. But for me, it's clear that this has to happen. This is what I was saying. The restoration of healthy masculinity will result in a healthy restoration of community and family, and a breaking down of the division between sexes, because men will be something that's aspirational. Healthy masculinity will be something that's aspirational, and young boys will then follow that lead. I grew up where my toys were guns and firemen's helmets and air rifles, we're saying playing, cops and robbers, that sort of stuff. That's what I grew up playing. Now kids play computer games and scroll social media and get immersed in things which program them with these distortions, these indoctrinations that then we have to unlearn later in life. And it's a lot worse now than it was in my time when I was a little boy. So it's our responsibility as men to unify together and to begin creating healthy examples of what masculinity can be, and then start to hold the men around us to those same standards, and then start rewarding, acknowledging each other, because this is something men don't often do, is when we see a man who's showing up, to honor him. When we see a man who falters, we help him back up, we support him. That's what men are meant to be for each other. Is beyond this one-upmanship. The idea that we're in service to each other. We see each other rise. So I hope this has been a useful little Chautauqua. In the next session, I'm going to get into doing a breakthrough session on one of the men. All right, we're in a quick question and answer section in between before the coaching session, because there's just dripping gold out of the questions here. So the question there was, how do we tell the difference between, a person who is a framed man versus an unframed man with someone's like a bully? And I was just describing, well, the bully seeks external validation. He seeks to also dominate another to elevate himself, because he feels insecure within himself, so that it isn't from a foundation of security and high esteem. He has to try and diminish another to elevate himself. It says that he doesn't have high esteem within himself. He's seeking externally. And then you just asked another question, Carl. What was the follow-up question for that?
I was just kind of confirming that using that same line of logic is that you could use that same delineating factor, that kind of line in the sand, to evaluate yourself in real time, either in a given situation, whether it's, an isolated incident or something that's been ongoing, to be able to look at yourself and say, all right, it is this coming from a place of
Right,
empowerment and a framed state of being, or am I doing this because I'm looking for confirmation and validation outside of myself, and that, showing me this is something that I
got it,
need to change.
got it.
It's
And
a,
I
an
find
easy,
this
easy self-evaluation tool right there.
right, but I find this whole topic really interesting. What you're actually talking about is conformity to community and communal pressures, so social pressures, versus sovereignty. And you'll know that a huge part of what I do and talk about is sovereignty. Why? Because when a man is not sovereign, when he complies to the social whim, right, then he's not a framed man. He's an externally validated, an externally referenced man. So last night I was in a gathering, a social gathering, and someone started passing around a cigarette, and someone else passed around a joint. And it was passed to me, and I was like, no, I'm not interested in doing it. Now, there's times when I smoke tobacco, I've got a pipe, I'll do it in a ceremonial setting, but I wasn't going to smoke just because it was passed to me without checking to see what was true and authentic to myself in that moment. Will I love myself more by participating in this? Is this action in accordance with my highest good and well-being? No, then I'm not interested in doing it. If it's something that is for my highest good, that I choose for myself, then I'm in my sovereignty, and I'm still belonging to the community where there's alignment. I can choose to involve myself in activities and actions that are part of the collective momentum and what they're doing, if they conform in my sovereignty to what I deem to be my highest expression. And ideally, that will be automated if I'm a leader in that community. I will show up in a way that's authentic in my sovereignty, that is also good for the community, you'll see an increasing blending of those activities coming into alignment with each other. Because I'll be surrounded by men that don't smoke. I'll be surrounded by men who work out. I'll be surrounded by, women who appreciate men in some capacity or want to dance with them or engage with them without drinking or do whatever. It's like you start to just have healthy behaviors, and the people who surround you reinforce those healthy behaviors.
I'm curious, based on kind of the first comment you made about the group expectation, community expectation versus sovereignty and self-determination. Do you happen to know of any examples of either, whether it's just a community or even a civilization, any group of people, where the group expectation is individual sovereignty?
Only if you create it, not in society. There are fraternities where you have common interests. Increasingly, there's men around gym clubs, there's things like that, where there's the values that are established for the community. Like example, Sovereign Brotherhood, the one that I'm creating. You come in there and it's about men doing the work. It's about men that are willing to hold themselves to integrity, that are willing to own their shit. That's not regular society. And that's another reason why I'm massively motivated to create Sovereign Point, is to literally create an environment where the collective values reinforce sovereignty, aka, divine right alignment, where your actions and the communal actions are aligned. So you get everyone operating in their sovereignty, they're choosing their experience, but those experiences are for the highest good and well-being of all. It's an optimized environment for well-being. So there's a confluence between sovereignty and the collective will. That's the optimum. It's when you get common unity. That's where the word common unity comes from. Community. There's literally that. We're all sovereign beings that have found a common unity. That's what you're describing. I find it fascinating because this is a vulnerable share in a way, but I'll go with it. I found in some circumstances that I was lacking empathy for people that were not following the path that I was on. So I'm inviting men to go forward. I'm stepping up. I'm going for what I want in life. And then sometimes I would hear a man whining and being all, like basically victim mentality, highly emotionally reactive. They'd be like, I just don't want to have that around me, and I didn't quite understood where that lack of empathy came from. And then I finally understood what it was about. I experienced it as a threat to my sovereignty. That if I tolerate this person's behavior in my presence, that somehow my authority, my sovereignty was going to be compromised, because I'm allowing that person into my world in some capacity. For me to choose my state that I'm in, I want to feel happy and healthy and focused. And you're being a victim mentality that's bringing chaos to my world. It's not the experience I want to create for myself. And then I understood even deeper, well, I can't really help the man. So whilst I can still set a boundary for how much time I'll give him, I can still have an empathy for him on his journey. I can still direct him, but it doesn't mean I have to tolerate the conversation. I can call out, hey, I just noticed you're very strong on the victim language right now, brother. Do you need support or help on something? I'm here to help. What do you need? Right? Versus just dismissing behaviors. And a part of that was me, I have a coaching circle. I'm like, go join the circle. Then I'll give my time, energy, attention. And I'm known. Well, it's still probably not the best example in a public environment if I'm not actually giving men a chance who show up in a way which I deem to be, just not a strong expression of masculinity. And it wasn't doing favors, because sometimes men come from pain, are in pain, express themselves from pain, and it's really a cry for help because they don't have the language, they don't have the way to communicate in a constructive way. So they communicate from that place of victim mentality or from that place of overwhelm, or whatever it might be. And sometimes, like Mithu brought to the awareness before, it gets wrapped up in the distortions of what they think I'm about without actually knowing what I'm about. The projection onto me being what they think masculine frame is. I literally have men who feel personally attacked, who I've never spoken to, by my content calling men forward. They're like, oh, you know, what, I don't have to be that way to be valued or accepted as a man. You know, I accept myself as I am. I'm like, dude, you can be whoever you want to be. I'm just saying the path's going to be easier the moment you have an internal frame of authority and an internal frame of reference. Your life will be easy. The moment you start to live in integrity and be accountable to your word, your life will be better once you start to surround yourself with men who are on the same path. Your life will be better when you start to have discipline and ritual in your self-care, to start making yourself a priority. Your life will improve. So I'm not here to tell you what you're going to do. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm not here to say that my way is the only way that you need to follow. But it's interesting when it's so much of masculinity, I find we tend to protect our pains and our wounds because they define us in some way. For many men, our suffering defines us subconsciously. I had the rough childhood. I had the abusive father. I had the mother who left me, right? And so we carry our pain into every interaction because it's the unresolved trauma. And then we attract the partners, the women who reflect their unresolved pain, and it's all amplified. We just in this pain loop. And then we live in relationships where we're trauma bonded. And I'm saying that to my best of my knowledge, the way out of that is to heal the trauma, to start to build yourself up in your esteem through disciplined self-care, to start to hold yourself as a man of integrity who meets and makes good on his mistakes. Your life will improve. You start to feel better about yourself. You start to come into esteem. You know, you start to be a valued member of society, and you'll start to recognize that you have something valuable to bring. You'll start to respect yourself, and you'll expect respect from others. That's the path. You like, yeah, like I've said before, like I don't believe a man can just say I love myself without actually feeling at some level he's earned it. I don't know. It's just men have to do shit. We have to take action, break through, you know, the doubt, break through the fear, break through, you know, our own self-imposed limitations, and then we start to feel that we can honor ourselves because we did what we said we would. We achieved what we committed ourselves to. So setting yourself an aspirational outcome that you commit yourself to, and setting yourself a version of yourself, like a version of the man you wish to become, and just building that, making that, working towards it. That's how you start to build yourself into a high value man that feels deserving of the rewards that come to you. Any other questions? What are you doing?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a quick question on something you shared a little bit about, which was being in groups in like a sober state and holding that masculine frame in what you want to be in. And then I find myself in that, but then I also find myself not finding those tribes of people that are doing those things that I want to do sometimes, or not somehow vibrating it at a similar place to draw those people in. What are your thoughts on that?
Good question. When I first came to Lund, they weren't here. And then I started to build that's what part of what got me back into men's work, is I just wanted to be surrounded by men that I could feel that I was held by. When I was going through my low points, I didn't have men around me, or at least men that I felt could really hold me in my dark moments. Right. So in the end, it was a gift because I dug myself out of the hole that I put myself in. But the shorter thing is, we as men don't prioritize connection in a way that women and social creatures do. Right. We're typically very purpose focused rather than relationship focused. Right. So my recommendation, and whether, you know, I like to see some of this starting to happen with organizations like mentorship, going to work out with each other. But for me, it's things like, yeah, maybe going free diving. You know, you want to start to have places where you can talk. There's a games night I go to as well. There needs to be intentional time. And men need to make being around other high quality or high value men a priority. Because what most men do is when they get into a relationship and they default to giving their time to the woman, right? without holding any boundaries, because at some deeper level, their fear of loss. I think if they ask for what they need, they will be rejected, or they have a chance of losing the woman that they're now very obviously attracted to. But a lot of that reflects the man's attachment to that woman. And why does he have that attachment to that woman? Because he's externally referenced. He thinks that his approval, his value, his acknowledgement comes externally. And to some extent, she might be doing that. But to the extent that she is, she will eventually begin to rebel against that. This is the whole point. But if a man claims he has frame, like I said, he's willing to stand for what he knows, will hold himself in his highest expression, in his business environment, in his personal health. If gym time is something that he must do, if going diving or free diving or whatever, going to fight, like boxing classes, whatever his specific things, still with consideration of taking care of his family unit, if he makes his self-care a priority in the long run, he will do a better job of taking care of himself and therefore taking care of the family. And his wife or woman will respect to him from him doing what he knows to be in his highest good in a way that will take better care of all of them. She might even protest, but this is the part of it. The woman might want all the time from the man, but if he can't set a boundary for what he knows he needs to do to take care of himself, he's going to sacrifice himself over time. And then she will have resentment towards him when he starts dropping the ball, when he's no longer able to give anymore, when he starts to get worn out, when he starts to lose momentum, right? Because he didn't set the boundary and take care of himself. And another voluntary declaration. I was that man. That's why I can speak to it with authority. I was the man who put himself in credit card debt when I had no fucking money to keep my agreement that I would take a woman on a trip, when really I was just hoping to get her back and not lose her. So I put myself in debt rather than do what I knew was in my highest good to try and save the relationship, which was the exact thing which was just pushing her away. Of course she took it. She was getting a free paid trip. But she wasn't with me because she respected me. She was losing respect for me. This is the whole point. Because I was attached and I was externally referenced. I had all the things. I had the success. I had the, until I lost it. I got corrected. I got humbled because I needed to learn to make love the highest priority from within me and not seek it externally. And so I had to go through those lessons. Did I answer the question, Elijah?
Yes, you did. Thank you. I also wanted to share quickly the book Tribal Leadership is really great on piece you touched on there about having people come into the space that are coming from like a negative sort of mindset, a victim mindset, and how, basically we're all just different frequencies and how to help elevate those people.
Oh, we're no longer living in community. So all this was kind of taken care of. We used to live in proximity. Men would go off and hunt together. It was just convenient because we lived in proximity together that we would corroborate around each other, right? I think it's an Australian word, is it? Corroborate. Anyway, digress. We would go hunt together. We'd practice our skills together. We'd go walkabout together. We would just naturally do things together, right? And the tribe would be naturally doing things designed to make ourselves effective in our role. And if we weren't doing that, then we're teaching our sons, right? This is just what we would do. We were teaching each other how to be men and how to grow, how to evolve. But we just don't have that anymore. We're not taught how to be men, and we don't have these rites of passage, and society isn't based around that anymore. It doesn't teach people how to be good people. It just doesn't. So this is part of returning to natural law, LORE, the natural ways. Because we've lost connection with that. We live disconnected from our habitat, and we live disconnected. We're communal dwelling. We typically live in tribes. We don't live that way anymore. We live in fragmented civilization. And then we have makeshift communities on top around interests, not around how to support each other's thriving. So how's everyone doing for time? I'm willing to do a quick breakthrough session, but I'm just thinking I need to also check out my calendar. So I notice we're at the hour, but this is some interesting content going down, some interesting stories and some interesting reflections.
Yeah, I'm good. I can stay for a while.
All right. Then I'm going to do a quick mini breakthrough then. And you've got 3 different people. Let me just feel in intuitively to who I'm meant to work with. Amos, for some reason, you're on my top left. I'm looking at you. Are you okay with us doing a quick breakthrough session? Okay, you're gonna need to I'll get everyone else to mute and then you can unmute. Amos, tell me something. What would you like to experience more of in your life right now? Just about to go into coaching session. So
right now, I would like to experience, I think, a lot of things resonated to me, like not having that father figure when I was growing up, and have a dad and have a leader. I had not the proper leaders in my life, and that really resonated a lot with me, because right now I'm trying to be a leader. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and recently I've been falling short.
And just describe how you've been falling short.
Well, it's been violence. I've been violent. Right? I've not been listening to my partner's needs. I haven't been creating that safe space for her.
Got it. So often when we lack safety ourselves, we create safety with the only means that we know how. So if we feel emotionally attacked, we become emotionally reactive. When we don't have the ability to regulate our emotions. And this is the discussion point that we were talking about before. Some men confuse having a frame with not being connected to their emotions. Not at all true. A frame man absolutely is connected to his emotions, but he knows how to respond in a way appropriate to the circumstance. So he moderates his emotions to bring order. If he needs to get aggressive, he gets aggressive. If he needs to be quiet and calm, he's quiet and calm. He has that range of expression. An unframed man doesn't have that. He hasn't yet learned how to adjust his response to what will restore order and harmony in the best way. It's a skill set. Part of it was what I was telling you before, the willingness to stand in intensity and not react. Another one is a thing that I do in my retreats. I have men trigger each other. Right? So you tell me what triggers you, and then you find a way to stay calm and reclaim your center again. So we intentionally trigger you, and then you choose you got to get triggered. The emotions will come up, but in a safe environment, you bring yourself back to center. Right? And another version of this that helps this process is what I call split awareness, or embodied. It's an embodiment practice. Embodied awareness. What does that mean? It means like what I'm doing with you right now. I'm talking to you. You can feel that I'm present with you, correct? You'd feel 50% of my awareness is not on you. 50% of my awareness is on myself. I'm literally feeling the pain of my butt on the couch. I'm feeling my belly. I'm not breathing as much because I'm talking. My awareness is on me, but it's also on you. Now, the beauty of that is that when there are moments of intensity, I don't give up the resources of my own body. I haven't been completely sucked into the external reality. So what's something that might trigger you?
Invalidations.
So that's disrespect.
Disrespect, yeah.
You don't tolerate disrespect, but you don't become emotionally reactive in disrespect. Difference. So someone's give me an example of someone being of what that the soundbite of what someone might say to you that is that invalidation or that disrespect. What might they say?
It could be very simple as like you're not doing things right.
You
Right,
might
like-
not be.
Yeah.
You might not be doing things right,
Yeah.
but you might be receiving it. One, you might be doing the best you can. Right? You might genuinely be doing the best you can in the circumstances, what you're capable of. Right? You might already be overwhelmed. You might already be a tipping point. You might already not be being acknowledged for the hard work you're doing. Right? So you have very limited bandwidth. So when you already feel like it's a personal attack that you're doing your best and it's not good enough, this is still an external referencing. There's two elements to this. One, someone externally to you is deciding your value. It's a threat to you. It's the first thing. And if you believe that, then that hurts. And that's how the pain lands. It's the first thing. The second thing is if you're not deeply taking care of yourself, then you're already going to be running thin. Right? Very easily overwhelmed when you're not taking care of yourself. So you're not setting boundaries for what you need. You know, I meditated for 44 minutes this morning. I had to go straight into a call. I didn't get to exercise, but I'll do it a bit later on. Typically in the morning, I'll meditate, I'll do my exercise, you know, I have my rising rituals. That's a must. It has to be. So you do these rising rituals that give you that buffer, that bring you back to the base level where you're at peace with yourself. That's the foundation of every morning. And if you have to get up early to do them, you do that as your priority. The second thing is the external referencing. So I want you to practice something right now. I want you to stay connected to yourself as I see this, as I speak to you right now. Just notice if anything comes up to you. So Amos, you're just not doing it right. You know, what you're doing is not working. I've asked you many times to do this and you just don't seem to get it right. How come you can't get it right? What do you do? Why is it that just the simple things you just don't do? I asked you to pick up after yourself and you're not doing it. You're just slouching on the couch. You know, you didn't do the things that I wanted to for your kids. Now, as I'm speaking to you in that way, how did you feel?
Feel my middle body like start to, I don't know, tense, not tense up, but like vibration, like
Right.
a response.
Starting to build. And if I was more animated and this went on for longer, eventually bubble, 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 pop. Right? So the first thing is you're in control of your breath and you observe. And you can address it in a way where you receive the feedback. So if it becomes disrespectful, then you say, listen, I see that you're frustrated with me. And it's true, I'm feeling overwhelmed in my life right now. And I'm not fulfilling all of my duties. So I can see you frustrated. Just acknowledge it. Don't defend it. Just like I can see you're frustrated with me. Don't go to shame though, and don't go to or guilt. Just go, I too would prefer right now that even with my best efforts that I would be fulfilling the roles that I'm meant to, that I wouldn't miss these things. But in my state of overwhelm right now, I'm not doing that. And what I need time for myself in the mornings. What I need is to have time to go to work out in the gym. You set yourself, if you've got a brotherhood around you, they'll coach you on this, which is like what's happening right now. And you'll start to build that buffer so that when she's being emotional, well, two things, when you've got the buffer and you're taking care of yourself, you won't make as many mistakes. If you're already thin and at your limits and you're managing financial stress and you're managing expectations of wife and carrying your kids, I mean, it's a huge amount, especially if you haven't got supportive brothers. So the only way that you can get more dominant force in your environment than the environment is on you. That's the way out of it as a man. You become the dominant creator of your own reality. And you don't get there by enforcing will. That's not at all what I'm talking about. You get there when you become the person who brings order to that environment. So you make sure you're well taken care of. You make sure that the family's taken care of. And this is not something that happens typically immediately. It can take years to build strong, authentic frame, to also build yourself into a financial strength. You know, this shit we're meant to be learning from the time that we're boys, which we weren't taught. So we're playing catch up whilst we're in a family. And now I'm learning the way that it's done in Indigenous cultures is even relationships, because there's also all our traumas that are somehow thrown into the relationship. The way that Indigenous tribes like the Kogi do it is they heal the trauma with each other before they go into the relationship. They're living in proximity. There's traumas come up, they resolve them with each other, and then they consecrate the connection. So you do the healing work before you go into the relationship. Our society is not built that way because we don't live in community. So many of the normal ways that communities function have been forgotten. So we're forced to do our best in relationship to the context that we're in, the circumstances we find ourselves where we're unprepared, underprepared, and unprepared for the roles being given. Right? We just are. Unless you had an extraordinary father, and unless you grew up in an Indigenous tribe that showed you how to become a man, which is none of the men I know. So the best solution is we help each other get back on track and then get forward. Like I said, I'd done 18 years of masculinity work or something like that, and I still didn't have masculine frame because no one had taught me that. Most of the men in the communities don't know what masculine frame is, this internal referencing and internal authority, and then how to actually develop and cultivate that within a man. There's good elements to it, like many of them have teaching your frame or becoming more self-aware in different circles that we have both attended. There's good elements to that, but it's literally someone teaching you how to be a man. What is the skill set? When you're getting anger, what do you do? Well, you've got to breathe into your balls. You got to feel grounded to the earth, right? And you don't get sucked into their reality. You just focus more of your attention on yourself. You feel you're getting self put in, you breathe into your belly, and you let it wash past you. And how do you build up your resilience in intensity when a woman's in a fire and directing it at you? You've already stood on nail boards. You've already sat in an ice bath. You've already sat in Temescal. And you literally stand on the nail board as you imagine your woman coming at you with her rage. And you breathe as it wash passes you. And as you stand in the overwhelm of the financial pressures, of what went wrong at work, of whatever else, you bring all that up and you stand on the nail board and you let it wash past you. You alchemize it. You show that you're going to survive it. Because a big part of all of this is that we feel threatened and then we defend. And the final part to this, which I can't do really inside this call, is integrating the killer part of yourself, which you already did, I think, though, with me in a different context. Because once you integrate the primal killer, typically you learn how to integrate him, meaning he doesn't have free reign. You have control over him, right? But if you don't have it integrated, then he runs rampant and you have no control, and he'll be suppressed, and all of a sudden he'll come out and it'll be complete damage, right? So hopefully you've improved since in some capacity, in some ways, by getting more resourcefulness and more awareness. What I'm telling you, though, the two things that I feel are missing for most men are the disciplined self-care and the somatic release through things like nail boards, ice baths, temescals, of what is weighing on them. And just talking about won't get you. It's a somatic release that has to come out of the body. When you are willing to stand in an intensity, meet the suffering, sometimes you might even cry, but you'll just meet it. That's how you begin to hold intensity and still have resourcefulness left over. It's just like going to the gym. You start to build up your capacity to meet the intensity. It's a skill set.
Yeah, those are definitely things I need to work on.
So self-care priority as a ritual, exercise, become fit, do the meditation, do the breath work. You will be a different man if you do that every morning. It's like a pressure relief valve It brings you back to a base foundation. Super important. All right. I didn't get time for a subconscious reprogramming today, but I hope that's been valuable to you. And for you, I think let's start start working on building up your ability to withstand intensity and start taking care of yourself as a priority.
Will do.
Right on. Well, this concludes today's session. I'm going to stop recording now. Thanks for all those who have been watching. Thanks to those men participating. I'll see you in the next video.
Hey,
All right.
brother.
You, bro. Thank you.